6, 3, 2, 1. All righty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome back to meditation from Sinai. How's our screen doing? Hold on, folks that are on Zoom, welcome.
Good.
All right, I guess we can see it. Welcome. It's so fantastic to have you, everybody on the internet. Sound good? Visual good? Fantastic. Well, we'll advise everyone here to grab a seat. Please feel at home. Gentlemen, ladies, gentlemen, so wonderful to have you. You know, we talk about, I don't know, Zen master. Is that a real word, Ira?
Absolutely.
He's visiting the city, comes to Manhattan, at least the old Manhattan. I don't know today. Hopefully, haven't been there in the last while. He comes to Manhattan. He's real hungry. Goes to the hot dog stand. He says, please make me a hot dog with everything in it. One of everything. The vendor puts it all together. The Zen master hands over a 20 to pay. And the guy goes to attend the next customer. So he says, hey, where's my change? The vendor says, change? That's got to come from within. Smart vendors knows how to wiggle out of furnishing the change. Thank you. You're cold? So why don't you maybe come on this side just because you're right in front of the vent. Well, folks, last week we began our journey through meditation. Last week we discussed, I don't like the way the projector's working. Hold on, I'm sorry, folks. Good. All right, maybe that's better. So last week we spoke about how we could invest our minds into tangible positivity. We spoke about the simple but life-altering key that Jewish meditation, among other disciplines of meditation, offer, realizing that our thoughts can really only be consumed by one topic at a time, and we can, with great exercise, mental exercise, with meditation, we can slowly become accustomed to imagining, to thinking about, to picturing something rosy, positive, optimistic, or uplifting, thus hopefully and ideally generating positive feelings, positive emotions. And we even discussed how those positive, peaceful, dare I say, blissful thoughts can actually create and change reality itself. We dipped our toes into secrets of Jewish mysticism. We talked about the Sephirot. We talked about the dominance of mind, thought, over heart. And I hope maybe we've had the opportunity to ponder some of these tricks. I don't think they're really tricks, but we might call them tools. Hopefully they've introduced additional meaning, peace. But this week, we're going to dig even deeper. So hold on. So we spoke about how we could find peace, but tonight we're not only going to talk about how to control our thoughts or how to find additional peace and tranquility. We're going to dig deeper. You see, here's an important key that you may have not considered. Jewish mysticism as a discipline is not simply, okay, I think we're going to have to shut off that AC. It's not simply what we might call utilitarian. It's not simply it's not simply as a tool, as a resource for mindfulness, which it is, for peace, which it is, for calm, which it certainly is. It's not just to help us escape bad feelings. Jewish meditation is meant to transport us to a deeper place so we could begin to see, and Jewish mysticism, meditation hopes that we'll begin to experience the realm that is otherwise unseen, the realm that is typically hidden. And in this session, we're going to share some eye-opening processes, meditations, not seen. We're going to go and we're going to discuss how Judaism hopes to transport us into a realm, to a space that is not always seen. And we're going to see how, through deep and highly focusing our thoughts and our attention, we can perceive that which is otherwise invisible. It's big, it's heavy, but we're going to be a little bit academic, a little experiential, and hopefully we'll all walk away with something enlightening and interesting. First, I want to tell you a story. I love this story, and maybe you love it too. Many years ago, there was a man called Isaac. He lived in Poland, somewhere in a suburb of Krakow. He was really poor, a man of deep faith in God, and he begins to have strange dreams. He dreams afar off in the big city of Prague, which was a known Jewish city, very far from Krakow, certainly if you're traveling by foot or hitchhiking. And he dreams of a bridge, and under the bridge, he dreams that there's he dig a deep hole and he'll find a big chest full of treasures. Isaac has nothing to lose. He's currently unemployed. He wakes from his dream and decides he's going to pursue the destiny that he knows is being shared from on high in his dream. And he makes the trek all the way to the city of Prague. No, from Krakow to Prague. He goes to the big city. He finds the bridge, but there's a problem. There's a guard who's paid to keep people away from, if you're going to give a spoiler alert, hold on. Go ahead, Ira.
Did he have the dream once, or did he have it several times?
Hold on. The officer says, stop, no trespassing. It's possible the officer didn't have a deep endearment for people of the, shall we call the Abrahamic faith. He may have had no lost love for Jews. And he says, what are you doing here? And the guy says, listen, I have a secret. I got a dream, a message on high. There's a treasure buried under the bridge. I know where it is. If you let me through, I'll give you 50% of it. Just let me go. I got to go. The guy says, are you Meshuggah? You're going to listen to your dreams? As a matter of fact, I have a nightly dream all week that there's some crackpot called Isaac, the Jew from Krakow, and under his stove, there's a treasure. You think I'm traveling to Krakow to find the treasure? Isaac gets the message. He goes running as fast as his little feet can carry him back to his home, right down the highway and from cities, comes to his home. He moves the stove, he digs a hole, and sure enough, there's a big treasure there. It sounds fantastic, and it is, but apparently there was actually a synagogue in Krakow called Isaac's Synagogue. We know who the guy is. He became a banker. He lent money to one of the kings of his age. And he actually found this, what do we call it? This otsar, this treasure in his house. So what happened? Isaac had to travel all the way from Krakow to Prague to find out that really the riches he was hoping for, the answer to his prayers, the life-changing opportunity was under his feet. And you know what, dear friends? I think we can all agree that sometimes we don't realize the deep treasure that's not far off in some far-flung place, this powerful treasure into this deep. Okay. Try now.
Okay, I can hear it now. It's good.
Okay, go ahead.
No, you were just cutting off.
I was cutting off?
Yeah.
But now is good?
Now, so far.
Thank you for stopping me. Everyone else, now is good? Before wasn't good? Okay, next time, just put a hand like that. Let me know that you can hear me. Thank you. So again, we're telling the tale. You heard the story?
Yes.
And Isaac finds the treasure under his feet instead of across the country, across the world. And the same can be said for us. We all have an incredibly powerful secret, a powerful treasure within us. And if we're looking for spirituality, we think that we need to go far, we need to seek far, and that it's beyond us. But in truth, it's within us. The problem is we need someone to tell us, or we need a technique to help us uncover this deep, valuable treasure called spirituality. And Judaism has a whole lot to say on the topic. And so this week, we're going to talk about how to discover spiritual awareness. Now, why is it if it's true what I'm saying, and Judaism strongly believes that we have a soul, we have inner reservoirs of spirituality, we have an inner channel to the divine, why is it, do you suppose, that we have such a struggle hearing that sound or feeling that elusive spiritual connectivity that we're claiming exists? Anyone want to shout out? We're going to give priority to the folks on Zoom first. Anyone have a fast theory why we don't immediately feel or see that treasure, the spirituality that's within? Karen?
Because I'm a meditator and I think I'm a spiritual person, I find I do have, after a lot of work, of course.
So Karen, you have found spirituality, but it's taken a lot of work. Okay, so let me back up for a moment. If you're in person, you have a book. If you're on Zoom, you're going to get a book, but you're going to have to endure this with more of a audio and visual experience. Exercise 2.1, page 38. Real fast, I want a raise of hand. How do you define spirituality? And how might spirituality be experienced? Page 38. How do you define spirituality and how might you experience spirituality? Anyone? What's spirituality? It's a belief. Great. Anyone else? What is spirituality? A frame of mind, a state of mind.
Frame of the intellectual aspect of it.
The intellectual experience. You're saying it's an experience that's not in a physical dimension. Is that what you're saying?
That's
No,
right.
spiritual will be there on everything. When we talk about spirituality, that's the way we
Intellectualizing
our connection.
our connection to something beyond us. Okay, I love that.
The universal harmony.
Universal harmony. We're going to always count. We're going to go to your last lowest to get knock it out of the park. All right, so that's great. This is an important thing. I'll tell you this. Google define spirituality. You're not going to find a single definition. You'll find, like, if you're lucky, 30 definitions. If you're unlucky, something closer to 100 different definitions. The reality is that we live in a world that's dominated by materialism. We live in a world, this is not a critique, but it's a reality. We live in a world that the matters of material nature, tangible, are a whole lot more of a priority and of value to our universe and to our society. It's just a fact. Like, take it or leave it, love it or hate it. It is what it is. And to live a conventional, normal lifestyle means most likely you're going to primarily interact with material items. And by extension, you're going to see the world in that paradigm. Again, this is not criticism. It's something that, and Karen, you tell us that you do a lot of investment in spirituality. I know there are others with us. Julie, did you tell me that you invest a lot in meditation? So we have people that with great effort try to overcome, rise above this reality. But the fact of the matter is that the default is the body, our material experience, our bodily experience, and less so the matters of the spirit. Some folks tell me, Rabbi, spirituality is a story we tell ourselves. It's a fiction to make ourselves feel good. And if you embrace that definition, I hear you. I'm not going to call you crazy. Others tell me, yes, of course I feel spirituality, but it comes with a lot of work, orientation, and effort. So how can we all? What does Judaism have to say? How might we possibly feel spirituality? So the reality is, and I already alluded to it, and our screen will share with us now, that there is really, our human existence has two components, a body and a soul. And the default consciousness, we might say, reflecting our reality, is going to be the bodily senses, which are only aware of tangible input. It feels good, it tastes good, it looks good, it sounds nice. Those are things that we can tap. Those are things that we can confirm. And that is what our reality is. We have also a neshama, a soul. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. But first, let's do another exercise, if you'll indulge me. Folks on Zoom, listen carefully. Again, I'm sorry if you don't have it in person. Record just to yourself. Do it mentally, or if you have a pen, I know some of you don't have pens. Record many descriptions about yourself, as many words as possible to accurately describe you. How would you describe you? You don't have to tell me, but just try to think about different words you might use to describe yourself. Give a second just to think about it. I think don't get too excited about yourself, Alon says. Don't overdo it. All right. So let me ask you, just try to, well, okay, I'll give another few seconds. Well, it depends.
You mentioned spirituality, so now we're all trying to be super spiritual.
Oh, you see, I already gave away the.
Spiritual.
All right. So either you have a list or you have a mental list. And again, you don't need to share it, but the odds are a lot of the things you describe are the things you do, the things you're good at, maybe your societal role, maybe you're the president or a board member of a corporation or your condo association. But I'm sure some of you also describe things that are less technical and more about your vision, your dreams, your hopes, your, dare I say, descriptions that portray a spiritual side to you. Sheila, yes?
I think it's what I wrote down, great things I'm doing or life or good at, but about character things, like you're pleasant, you're positive.
Oh.
Those are things that are
So let me ask you, pleasant.
important.
Pleasant, would you call that something of the material or something that's a little bit more?
That's right.
Oh,
We talk about more spiritual, we talk about our inner self. So it's, to me, it's very important about people's personal characteristics.
so Sheila, you're making my point beautifully, and I want to thank you. If we're going to describe ourselves describe our character, our values, that's all straddling or touching upon a deeper and, dare we say, truer and more important dimension. So let's get a little clearer. Let's go to text 1. And here, let me just get us up to date. So here, our default is the body. It's what we have a tangible input. Society emphasizes material gain. I'll never forget the time, and pardon me, as you know, people come and go from the neighborhood, and somebody was moving from Hallandale Beach to Golden Beach. Golden Beach is just down the block, nice big homes. And the person told me, Rabbi, we got a home in Golden Beach. And I said, oh, that's wonderful, congratulations. Which side is it on? The person turned red. He said, Rabbi, well, we're not on the ocean side. I said, oh, I started laughing. I said, oh, what I was asking you is, are you closer to Chabad at Golden Beach? Or are you closer to our Chabad? I was asking a question about distance from the shul. But because, and I have no judgment for this person, because our default way that society structures and values things is affluence and material wealth, well then it's a shame that you're not yet able to live on the ocean and you still need to live in a measly mansion on the other side of the street. So again, I'm not saying this, he's not here, but I'm not saying this to criticize him, but it's just a reminder of how our society ticks. And for me, it's a reminder where you have to really think deeply about what you're saying, because an innocent question could really be deeply hurtful. Anyways, page 40, text 1. Let's read about our composite creation. This is from Genesis.
But, people do think.
We'll get there. Yes. Genesis, the very first portion of the Bible, describes God's creation of mankind. And there's an important text, Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, again, page 40 if you have the book. God formed the human from the dust of the ground, and he breathed into humans' nostrils the soul of life. Again, God formed the human from the dust of the earth, and he breathed into the human's nostrils the soul of life. Anything interesting about that statement that you notice? Anything interesting about that statement? Breath. But what I want to point out is man is created by God in a 2-step process. First, he is formed, and then God breathes into him the breath of life. The Kabbalists say, and again, myself included, many of us are animal lovers, so this is not an insult, God forbid, to animals, but the Kabbalists say that when God created animals, he created them in a single moment, body and soul at the same moment. Whereas with the human, first he created the material, the body, and then he infused it with the gift of life, the breath of life of a soul. Humans are unique in that God conveyed to us through our creation that we have two components, body and soul. Body represents all of the material values, all of our physical needs and necessities. Human beings actually need to eat. They need to have shelter. They need to be comfortable. This is not a criticism. But then we also have the ability to touch, to be in tune with matters of the spirit, of the soul. And although we are all very much body conscious, which is about how we feel and what our body tells us we need, there's another side to the coin, and we're talking about the soul's identity. How did we become soul conscious? How do we become soul conscious? And so last lesson, we talked about the soul. We showed a hierarchy of intellect stacked on top of emotion, and therefore intellect, our brain, what we know can influence how we feel. The brain's determination that something is good will create good feelings for that thing. The brain telling us this thing is toxic, hazardous, or bad for us will cause feelings of fear, disgust, etc. Well, the soul's a whole lot deeper than that. That still describes character or personality, but the soul is something in its essence that it's a whole lot deeper. Text 2, this is in the daily prayers, a very important prayer called Elokai Nishama. Page 40. My God, the soul that you placed within me is pure. You created it. You formed it. You breathed it into me. The soul in its essence is a pristine spiritual force gifted to us by our Creator. Pure, transparent, divine. The soul, by extension, is always seeking something above it, something more spiritual, more altruistic, more divine. And when we hear the voice of our soul, it asks the same of us, to seek meaning, to seek purpose, and to be attuned to the spirit of every matter in life. Spirituality is not simply a quest for meaning. It's more than that. It's our core need to tap into the truest truth, which is the higher being, God, our Creator. As a matter of fact, text 3, Proverbs, the human soul is the candle of God. What might be the parallel between a flame and a soul? Anyone want to take a stab at what might be the common denominator between a candle, a flame, and the soul? So Alon says, look at a flame, and it's always leaping upwards. It's always looking up. And a flame, by definition, seeks, this is very strange, a flame essentially looks to burn through the fuel, then poof, it somehow goes to a higher dimension of existence. The flame dissipates. It disappears when it runs out of fuel. And the soul, in a sense, can be described in very much similar terms. Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, in his essential work of Jewish mysticism, you may have heard of it. It's called the Tanya. Karen, I'm sure you've heard of the Tanya. Everyone else too. I don't mean to pick on you, Karen, but
Okay.
page 42. The nature of a flame is to flicker upward, indicating that the flame intrinsically seeks to part from its wick in order to unite to its source above. The flame can't escape the wick unless something blows it out, but that's the orientation of the flame, away from the wick. Similarly, human soul naturally desires and yearns to separate itself, to escape its body in order to unite with its origin and source in God, the blessed source of life. Now, this is, God forbid, not a call for suicide. I want to be very clear, but it's describing the innate human instinct to be consumed in something above it. And what we're describing perhaps is the quest that some of you describe so beautifully, the quest for spirituality, the quest for meaning. That is something that is being telegraphed to us and through us by our neshama, by our soul. A soul wants to find something spiritual. That is its language. That is its currency. That's its true identity. Understanding the soul's identity gives us a definition of spirituality. The awareness of divine presence or truer existence that's beyond material definition and beyond the material realm. We got very close in our initial descriptions. Sheila, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, it says it's to be consumed by something greater than ourselves.
Yes.
I think that's
Yes. Beautiful. And so our soul naturally, by extension, sees the world with this lens, a lens of true purpose, true value, true spirituality. We're going to try an experiment again. I'm going to try to share a film. If it works for the folks in Zoom, we're going to do it. If not, I'm going to send it by email. So give me a thumbs up if it works, and folks in house as well. We're going to do a guided, I don't want to call it meditation, but a guided mini meditation with Rabbi Wolf. Everyone say a prayer.
We have two voices speaking to us from within. One voice is our lower order self, Nefesh Bahamis. The Nefesh Bahamis urges us to live a life of pleasure, of ease, getting what we want whenever we want it. The other voice is the voice of the Nefesh Elokis. That's our godly self. That's the self that seeks connectedness with people in love, connectedness with the world and its elements, feeling fulfilled, connectedness with Hashem. Gently close your eyes and just become aware of your inner self, your inner quiet, that place you can escape to, because it's always a place where you have your own sense of self. Allow that special place to be your refuge, that place of inner sanctity, totally protected, always safe. As you step out of that space, become aware of your two inner voices. Listen to the voice of the Nefesh Bahamis. Note what it tells you. It says, you're insecure in this world. You need to shore yourself up. You need more and more and more. Otherwise, you're unsafe. Build walls around you. Wealth. Create superficial pleasures, because life is short. The Nefesh Bahamis is the voice of the ego. Now listen to the truer voice of the Nefesh Elokis, the voice that tells you that everything possesses truth and meaning, that your happiness and joy comes from connecting truly to people, to the world around you, by connecting to the inner selves, the soulful center. The voice that tells you pleasure doesn't come from material acquisition. It comes from the smile of appreciation for having helped someone, for the small gift that you give your grandchild, for the blue sky that you wake up to. In life, choose which voice you are going to listen to. It may be that you don't need to have a battle within, a fight between them. You might even be able to transform the Nefesh Bahamis into an ally, giving its energy the capacity to do the right things. But always allow yourself to recognize that your true voice is the voice of the Nefesh Elokis. In so doing, your life will be replete with happiness and fulfillment.
Was that good?
So we've described two voices, giving us input and trying to urge us along in life. What do we do? What do we do? How do we allow and give extra accessibility, more of a voice to the divine soul that we're describing here? And how do we turn down the sound, the static of the body? And so I was thinking that maybe a good example would be, we're driving, and today, thankfully, you have Spotify and you have really perfect, okay, I don't know, the real Navinim will tell me that Spotify isn't high quality. But we have, once upon a time, you have a radio station playing a song and you're on the periphery of the station's reach and you cannot hear the sound. Or better yet, you're driving in the car, the windows are down, or there's some noise, or I'll tell you in my life, I'm driving in the car and there's a whole bunch of kids in the car, screaming and hollering and fighting. But you want to hear the song. What do? Or in our world, we're getting so much material input. We're being told we need to pay the tuition and you need to keep your house in order and you need a this and that and right, all the expenses that is life. And therefore the values and the things we're going to prioritize are our material needs. And that sometimes drowns out the lone voice of the divine soul within. What is the answer? And so you know the answer because you came to a meditation course, and one of the answers is going to be meditation. To be a little cliche, I might say there's two types of meditations. One answer, try to get rid of the static. Get your kids to be quiet in the back seat. Remove the distractions to allow the voice of the soul to speak. The second option, which we're going to discuss at length, is going to be to turn up the sound. Make the music a little loud. Try to tune out the distractions by magnifying the sound you seek. As if it was so possible to just, with the wave of a wand, get rid of all the distractions that are everything about this world. And how do we turn up the soul? And so then, of course, the short answer, meditation. The long answer, we're going to talk about two ancient art forms, two forms of meditation. So now we're going to get to the meat and bones, if you will, the essence of our discussion. So what I want to talk about here, so our inner spiritual voice is silence. So one option is, I'm going to have to use my own words. I don't like these words. It's a little bit too fancy. We're going to talk about possibly tuning out the distractions that are around. So there's a Hebrew word that is actually popularized today, but it has a different meaning. I'm going to discuss both definitions. The word is hitbodedut. Anyone here a Hebrew speaker? Miriam, who was here last week, is traveling. Hitbodedut. Yassi, hitbodedut. Don't give me like the fancy, tell me what if you didn't know what hitbodedut was, what would it mean? Isolation, solitude. Eitan, you agree? Okay. So the voice of the soul is being distracted. And so one formula of meditation, is to try to turn down the sounds. Turn down the sounds that are all around us. And so there's an ancient meditational technique called hitbodedut, which literally means seclusion, isolation, solitude, which encourages a person to withdraw into themselves, into their spiritual state, and to remove themselves mentally from all the distractions and matters of the material world. So I'm going to tell you two short points and then we'll elaborate. In ancient times, great folks of deep mystical prowess had the capacity to literally enter into a trance-like state and literally mute all the distractions. I know this sounds like meditations that we exercise, to the point where somehow they were able to have a spiritual journey, or even have some kind of prophetic experience. I know there are schools of thought that think that they could teach that today. I'm personally not in favor or supporting of that, but it exists, and it certainly was once a authentic technique and method of Jewish practice. And then there's what we call modern hitbodedut, which is popularized by the Breslov Hasidic movement, which is to go out into a solitary space and have a heart-to-heart conversation with our Creator in our own language, in an entirely vulnerable, authentic, and raw way of communicating with God. Both can be described as forms of meditation, one very advanced and complex, and the other essential, but probably a more accessible to all of us, even those that don't have years of meditational experience, acknowledging that some of us do have vast meditation. So let's go to text 5, page 43. This is the writings of a very famous person, but unfortunately, his father was even more famous, and so he's frequently known as Abraham, son of the Rambam. So this is the son of Maimonides. If you're the son of Maimonides, you're not going to have your own identity. I'm sorry, but you should be lucky to have a father like Maimonides. And so he's known as Abraham ben Harambam, Abraham, the son of the Rambam. And he describes hitbodedut, seclusion, as being one of the most superior of all the distinguished practices. It is a practice of the greatest saints and the medium through which prophets experienced revelation, a practice not just to be secluded so that you have the silence, which we might in contemporary meditation, a lot of times it's just about clearing space, right? But they would actually do this. They would mute their own voice in the hope to hear a higher voice, to hear the voice of the divine, encouraging the person to meditate in quiet solitude, somehow maximizing concentration and focus, but while being in this state of inner aloneness, they would begin to have a connection with something higher than them, a divine being. And this was an authentic practice that describes the effort of many Jews in the ancient times, in biblical times, to become prophets. As a matter of fact, there was a class of people in the temple era called B'nai Hanavim. I don't know if you ever heard of this. If you study prophets, you have B'nai Hanavim. If I wanted to be uncharitable, I would say they were prophet wannabes. But that's not really what they were, aspiring prophets. They went through all of the exercises and made all of the lifestyle choices to optimize and maximize the odds of being gifted with the gift of prophecy. Now realize that to have a conversation with someone else, there needs to be two willing partners, right? I could talk, but Sharon, if you're not willing to engage, we're not having a conversation. And so similarly, the prophets were open, but they still needed to have the circumstances and be gifted with this prophetic experience. But this is one type of deep meditative practice. And I'm sorry, this I'm going to communicate to you more in an academic sense than in a how-to sense, because it's a little bit beyond my pay grade. I'm not going to read the whole text for you, but when you get your book, take a look at text 6. This is from another great mystic, sometimes referred to as the Shalah, Rabbi Yeshaya Horowitz. And he describes how many rabbis I'm using the word rabbis, we're talking about many of the great Jewish spiritual masters would go into these secluded states. They would detach from everything around them and even from their own the sensory input of their own 5 senses, and they would go into these states of being. He says, for example, the Arizal, Isaac Luria, the great Kabbalist, the founder of what we call the Lurian School of Kabbalah. So he encouraged his students, when they reach this advanced state, to allow themselves to go into these meditative states. By being alone, we can turn down, they had a technique to turn down the static, to turn down the distractions of this world, and the soul would shine forth and they would be able to tap into the spirituality that was innate and within them. One of the challenges we have today is that in order to hear the sound of the soul, we need to have soul vocabulary. We need to be aligned with soul values, and it's a struggle. And I don't think most of us are willing to give up on all values and all experiences to simply experience the divine. But there are and there were, and that's what we're describing here as this intense degree of mystical transcendence or hitboredut. Text 7 is another lengthy text from Rabbi Haigon. We're talking about rabbis. He passed away around 1038. So we're talking about folks that lived 1,000 years ago. And he too describes this technique of people encountering the prophetic visions portrayed in the Bible, the chariot of Ezekiel and other things. And he describes works of antiquity that describe the experience of these expert mystics as they encounter those prophetic type experiences. And this was, again, the root for much of the teachings and the inspiration of prophecy and the Kabbalistic masters of times past. To try to go on this level is fraught. It's dangerous. I hope you're not upset or disappointed I'm telling you this. The Talmud tells a shocking tale. Text 8, page 47. Folks on Zoom, it's kind of quiet. If anyone has any questions or thoughts, I welcome some input. But let's do text 8, and then I want to hear from you. The Talmud shares as follows. 4 individuals went on this meditative trip. They went on a journey into themselves. and into a different dimension. This is described as entering the orchard. So anyone here who's encountered mystical works, you'll occasionally see references to the pardes, to the orchard. Have you ever seen references? Anyone here familiar with the word pardes? So pardes, which literally means orchard, similar, yeah. It means orchard, but it's describing people going on a soul journey while being in this world. The Talmud says 4 individuals went on this mystical, again, maybe trip is the wrong word, but that's the word I'm going to use. They went on this journey in inner travel. They were called Ben Azai, Ben Zoma, Acher, and Rabbi Akiva. 3 of them had devastating results. One died, one lost his sanity, another person was so traumatized he abandoned his faith, and only Rabbi Akiva famously emerged as wholesome as he was from the outset. And you know why he emerged wholesome? You know why he survived the trip? The Talmud says, you're going to be surprised. It's almost a little bit of a counterintuitive thing. He did not go on the trip simply for the experience. He was grounded in the awareness that human existence needs to all come back to reality, needs to come back to our present state of being. That's where the human contribution is most felt. And that grounding is what allowed him to go on this, what must have been a fantastic journey and an experience that it's hard to fathom, but he was constantly grounded by realizing he has to take the off-ramp and come back to be a productive person in society. So mysticism, or I should say meditation for him on this vast way, was not just an experience, but it was to impact his ability as a leader, as a teacher, and a spiritual guide. So this is the advanced Hitbodedut. If anybody here has more experience, I'd love to hear privately, and then maybe I'll share it. But again, this is talking about something that I don't believe many folks in 2022 experience. I know myself, I struggle just to shut off my cell phone, let alone, going on a journey of totally muting all my senses and all of my values, but it's certainly admirable. But yes.
When you're talking about isolation, sounds are out, or you're going into a room where there's no sound.
So Lynn just asked, are we talking about going into a room where there's total isolation? Which, by the way, today we have the ability. They have these sensory deprivation tanks.
Or you just tune out.
But what we're describing is a inner effort to tune out external sounds,
Right.
but also internal input that are body oriented. And so, and again, maybe some of you get it better than others. I struggle to fathom that. But I know, Karen, you want to say something?
Yeah, I can relate to that because in my process of becoming more grounded and spiritual, I've been on spiritual retreats where we learn to meditate and isolate into self-reflect into our inner soul, not to get away from life or to escape life, but to have a connection with the above and be able to take the learning back into our lives.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Julie, do you have anything to add on this topic of meditation in this? Do you want to? Okay, you don't have to. I just wanted to make sure that you felt welcome if you wanted to. Okay. You're muted. If you want to unmute and say something, you're welcome to, but there's no pressure.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted.
No worries.
I'm having an issue with the connection, so I have to turn off.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I think it's my internet. Isolation. I think sometimes in meditation, it's actually important to isolate oneself, not to actually tune out from the world, but tune in within and Hashem. And I think at times it's quite important. So it's just my opinion.
Beautiful. So Julie is saying that sometimes a person does need to allow themselves to turn down the sounds that distract and allow themselves to turn towards Hashem and inwards. Did I say it right? And so it's not an escape, but it's really an inner reflection and tapping into the things, God, which is of supreme value. The distinction is, or where I'm describing, or what I'm somewhat struggling to personally execute, is the journey that we're describing as people going into a place where they struggle to return. That's a very deep and involved process that maybe is a little more advanced, but all of us can take time reflecting or pondering our inner true state of being and connecting to God, to our creator, and to our higher power, which brings me to the second method of Hitbodedut, which we described. And actually, bear with me, I know we still have to get to the primary material for today, but I want to share with you really briefly, if you'll join me on page 63. So here is an excerpt from the writings of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, who popularized the more contemporary method of Hitbodedut. And he describes seclusion is the highest asset, page 63, text 16, greater than everything. It requires setting aside at least an hour for secluding oneself in a room, a field, and finding ways to enter into a dialogue with your creator. Use words that evoke favor, placate, conciliate in order to entreat and plead with God that he bring you closer to him, to genuine divine worship. So he's describing a hybrid where you're both in a prayerful state, but also deep meditation. Conduct this prayer and conversation in your own language, etc., etc. It brings a person closer to God. And then further down, it allows a person to have a heightened perception of spirituality, because again, by turning down the distracting sounds, we're more likely to hear the crystal clear sound of the soul, of Hashem, of our priorities. Yes, Sheila.
Well, I go hiking and our family vacations with my children. We go to national parks and Yellowstone, Mount Zion, and things like that. That is a place, I think, being out in nature where you can really, it's a quiet place. I think you feel closer to yourself and your thoughts and everything, and closer to God.
Beautiful.
He was particularly having.
So Sheila is describing how when she goes into nature, here I'm translating, so I'm translating for the folks on Zoom. And when she goes into nature, she finds it to be a space where we can be more easily in touch with ourselves, with values, with God.
With the natural things that God
Yes,
made.
yes, and that's certainly something that we should all try to gift ourselves the opportunity to do so. Text 18.
I have something to say about that.
Well, just give me 1 second, then I want to read. Just text 18, page 68, is a quote from the Rebbe of Pieczna, who was famous because he was in the Warsaw Ghetto, and his teachings were recorded and preserved. He himself was martyred in the Warsaw Ghetto, and he describes another type of meditative exercise called silence or hashkata. And again, that's describing as well silencing the ego, silencing the voices, even the inner voices, to allow a certain empty void where we're more receptive and open to divine messages. Eitan, you wanted to share something?
Yeah, for me, what they do doesn't have to be in nature alone. You need to practice to do it wherever you are, maybe even during a prayer in synagogue. There's a lot of moments in prayer that you have to be silent and
Right.
which is, okay, that's the subject. Yeah.
No, you touched what I wanted to say next, which is that not all of us here. Eitan gave us the perfect segue.
I did what I need for the day. That's it.
No, stay engaged. Eitan points out that not all of us have the ability to frequently go into nature. Not all of us live near the wild. We live in a highly urbanized, developed area. Although if you want to go out into Dania Beach, you can spend time with the monkeys and the alligators. But I'm kidding. But generally speaking, not all of us have the opportunity to go out into the wild. But there are micro moments of Hitbodedut where we try to block out the sound. For example, When we say the prayer of Shema Yisrael, what do? We cover our eyes. Why do we cover our eyes when we say the prayer of Shema Yisrael? It's a moment. It's a micro moment of hitbodedut. We are symbolically, but also literally trying to make sure there is no visual distraction so we can focus on the deep, critical words, meanings of Shema Yisrael, the unity and the trueness of God's existence in our world. And similarly, Eitan makes the point that the Amidah as well is recited silently. We don't even wish to distract ourselves with the sound of our own voice. In Jewish tradition, we say the words, we say it in a way that's not about ourselves, it's an expression of humility. That's why some people, when they say the Amidah, they don't even move very vigorously. They'll just stand silently, visualizing that they're standing before God like in ancient times, a servant or a slave would stand before a king or a master. And there are even certain physical expressions of that dynamic because we're putting ourselves into the mental state that we're standing before our Creator. And that too, it's not radical, it's not so dramatic, but it's something that's built into Jewish practice to sneak a moment of solitude, even if you're in a room full of people. But for the moment, we're in a solitude communication with ourselves, our neshama, our spiritual sensor, and with our Creator. Just that you could hear without making noise. It's not about drawing attention or becoming, it's about a certain calm. It's about a calm standing before God. All right, so just to catch up on the slides, and then I want to move on to a second form of meditation. So you have hitbodedut, seclusion, distance from the material, and you have the mystical meditations, which was the source of prophecy, the Kabbalistic mystical experiences that are described in times of old. And lastly, I didn't touch upon this, but there's a writing from the Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Yisrael the great Baal Shem Tov, and he describes how he had an experience which he calls Aliyat HaNeshama, my soul ascended. And he describes how he was floating around, however that works. I never did this, in upper worlds and communicating with souls and higher force existence, higher beings. And so that too happened through his mystical meditation. Again, don't try this at home, but that's what we described here. And historically, these techniques were not taught in a group setting. They were taught privately and to people who'd already mastered extensive Jewish literacy, mystical literacy, and then they would be oriented in private into a higher state of being. And there had to be a lot of investment and desire and willing to sacrifice for it. And so now we're going to move on to the second form of meditation, which dare I say we might call a whole lot more accessible to the average human being. And many times, this can be a follow-up. So let's say you go into a state of hitbodedut, you block out the sound, you allow yourself a moment to come in touch with yourself, to be aware of your thoughts, aware of your breathing, come into a heightened state of awareness about yourself. But now what? What are you going to do with that? So Judaism, and again, other schools of meditation say that itself is the end of the journey. Judaism, and certainly Hasidic thought says that now you want to do something else. So until now, let's say we were talking about turning down the noise, telling the kids in the back of the car to shut up and stop making noise or whatever, or whatever else we do to try to tune out the distraction. Now we're going to talk about an attempt to turn up our spiritual volume, our soul's volume. And this we're going to call hitbonenut, which literally means contemplation or meditation. And so in addition to tuning out all the material input that distracts us and steals our focus and our priorities, we also seek an additional channel to turn up the light, to turn up the spirituality. And this is called hitbonenut. The word hitbonenut comes from the word bina or understanding, and it's the practice of meditating on an idea to deepen our appreciation of it. And here we're talking about meditation or thinking deeply and exhaustively around something of the higher state of being or a higher realm of existence. And so this is about turning up our soul's consciousness, giving our soul a louder voice, or putting the spotlight on our soul through our day-to-day. So we learned earlier that our souls are spiritual. They aspire like the flame to touch, to be subsumed into something higher, more abstract, more holy. And the soul understands that godliness and the truth of God is everywhere, but there's all this distraction that doesn't let his voice be, or her voice be heard. And so the first step is to study and become oriented about mystical ideas that describe spirituality, or again, this is a Jewish course, study Jewish teachings about existence, our creator, and how existence looks like from the soul's perspective. So the first step is for us to try to gain some familiarity with the language and with the vocabulary of the soul. Because, think about it, anything that's spiritual and abstract, and I think Sheila and some others pointed this out, doesn't instinctively get too much airtime. And so text 9, a central foundation, page 49, a central foundation. This is from Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Igrot Kodesh, where he writes down the traditional ancient practice of hitbonenut. He says the foundation of the study, sound is good on Zoom?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is to repeatedly spend considerable time in deep contemplation about the subject matter that's being studied or considered. And this form is called hitbonenut, which means to firmly visualize the concept, to analyze it deeply. So you hear an idea, you really want to think it over from every angle, every direction, and try to have intellectual clarity. Now it's hard for the mind to grasp something that is abstract. I think, Yossi, that was your point, right? The mind has to work hard to grasp something that's abstract. As a matter of fact, the rabbi standing here for an hour and a half almost trying to describe and help us and help himself grasp that there's something spiritual in a spiritual language. And then going back in time, Rabbi Bechaya ben Asher passes away in 1340. So he writes, so he lived a long while ago. Look at the screen for a moment. Oh, here, sorry. Oh, here. Hitbonenut is hyper engagement with the soul. It says, V'hashevot levavecha, take to your heart. But the word v'hashevot could also mean return to your heart. And so Rabbeinu Bachaya says, if you want something to touch your heart, you want your heart to be aligned with your soul, with matters of the spirit, you need to keep on reviewing it, recapping it, and thinking about it so that it becomes firmly etched in your mind and heart. And this is what we call hitbonenut. So how does this hitbonenut work? I'll show you on the screen, and then we'll take a fast look at text 11a, because then I will do a little exercise. No, I'm sorry, not yet. Text 11b. The Hasidic practice of hitbonenut involves actively contemplating a spiritual idea until it expands our creative intelligence, deepens our awareness, and becomes an indelible part of our consciousness. So you take an abstract idea, you think about it, contemplate it, and allow it to expand our creative ability to conceive of such an idea. Our awareness becomes heightened, and it becomes part of how we see existence, how we see the world. And so going through this form of meditation hopefully gives us greater spiritual literacy, allows us to become more in tune to the voice, the perspective, and the values of the soul. Why is it just for a moment. Why is this important in Judaism? Because Judaism believes that we should have a fully engaged relationship with our Judaism and a fully engaged relationship with our God. And so Judaism says, you want to be a Jew who relates to your Creator? Well, the Bible's full of commandments, things to do, but it's not enough to really, if you want to have a really deep relationship with somebody, you can't only give them gifts. You have to talk. You have to understand each other. You have to relate with each other. And so Judaism says, if you believe in God, that's great, but you want to find a common frame of reference. And so you want to allow yourself to feel emotionally to God, intellectually. And so that's why Judaism traditionally had a meditative practice to try to give the soul that feels divine existence and purpose, to really become in tune with it. And that's what this meditation is. So we're going to do a little bit of a bonanut meditation practice. Don't get overwhelmed. What we're going to do here is we're going to examine an original text that describes a nice but relatable idea from the world of the mystical reality. We're going to read it. With your help, we'll try to break it down. We'll try to parse it, and we're not going to, and then we'll spend a moment or two in personal reflection, and we'll see how it goes. But first, I want to show you another video, and in order to do that, I need to stop the share. So stand by. You folks that are on Zoom, don't be alarmed. Stop this share. And slideshow, bear with me. Ira, you may have seen this. If you didn't, you're going to like it. Hold on. Hold on. Share. Have you seen this? All right, take a look and let's.
Yes.
Folks on Zoom, I need you to just speak out if you cannot hear. If you hear, good. If you can't hear, because right now I can't see, I need you to speak out and say, I don't hear.
Mommy, can I share something? But promise you won't get upset.
Oh, sorry. The folks in
Of course.
don't see. Folks on Zoom, what do you see? You see the video?
Yeah, it was.
We see the video.
Yes. We do.
Yeah.
We do.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
Mommy, can I share something? But promise you won't get upset.
Of course.
I'm not sure I really believe in electricity.
Why, my love?
Well, where is he?
Electricity is the source and the life of our lives. He's beyond us and he's also within us.
But I don't feel him in my life.
Honey, he isn't in your life. He is your life. And my life and the life of all. The power of all powers. Electricity is lighting, heating, cooling.
You mean electricity's all of us put together?
Brilliant question. No, he's not the sum total of all powers. He is one, and we are one with him, a part of him.
So electricity breaks up into parts?
No, we're not a part of him like a slice of pizza. We are partial expressions of him.
So we're electricity?
Definitely not. Electricity is us, but we're not him. He's infinitely greater than us all. He is forever one and only, and yet through each new electrical device, another limited aspect of electricity is born into the world.
You just believe that?
I know that. It's self-evident. Honey, as you get to know yourself, it becomes ever more obvious that you are part of a greater self.
But religion is such a turnoff. Look at Freddie. He's an atheist, and he's so cool.
Freddie's a fridge. Whether he believes it or not, he's cool only because of electricity.
If we're anyways part of electricity, then what difference does it make if I believe or not? Will electricity punish me? Will he blow my fuse?
We are not punished for our disbeliefs, but by our disbeliefs. When we deny electricity and go against his will, we are really going against what we truly want deep inside. Service is not oppression, but self-expression.
Is that why Kobe the Coke machine had a sign on him that said out of service?
Uh-huh.
Mommy, what happens to us when we die? Is there light after death?
We never die. We just get unplugged and return back to electricity.
Huh?
Sweetheart, we're not lamps. That's just our bodies. We're light. We come from electricity, and to him we return.
Well, what about bad guys?
They do evil, but in essence they're not evil. They're just really confused and do bad because they think, this is my power and my strength, and I can do what I please.
Well, what happens to them when they die?
You mean unplugged?
Oh, yeah.
Evildoers are in for a big shock. They too will discover how all along they were a part of him and actually wronged and betrayed their own self. The shame will hurt like hell.
So they're going to hell?
Hell nor heaven is a place. It's a realization. All are destined to know that electricity is the one supreme self. This truth is hell for those who denied it, and heaven for those who lived it.
Mom, one more question?
No, that's it. This really isn't light bedtime conversation.
But I'm so turned on.
It's time to get some sleep. Good night, my bright boy.
So folks, I know we could just stop right here and spend the rest of our night trying to parse that and make sense of it, but we're going to do a little more first, so bear with me. Let's get back to our slides. Hold on.
Give a little excerpt about that
Hold on.
video
Well,
would be nice.
Sheila, that's gonna introduce what I want to talk about next. So,
Okay.
hold on, folks. One more second. I want to see you all. All right, there. I have you back. All right. So now with that, the discussion. This is a beautiful analogy. Again, imperfect, but really awesomely done. Discussion about spiritual, material, life, soul, and a body. And so together, let's read text 13. Folks that are on Zoom that don't yet have the book, again, please reach out to me to get your book. I'm going to read it, although I really love when the folks around read it, but it's going to be hard to do that. So everything that exists is comprised of a physical form and a spiritual. You hear me? Divine energy that creates and animates the entity's physical existence. This is clearly demonstrable in animals and humans. Animals and humans have an animating spirit. If the spirit were to leave their body, the body would no longer be classified as alive. The body would begin to decompose, turn to dust. Why is it that a body without a soul decomposes? That is because the very existence of the body hinges upon the spiritual energy that animates it. The same is true of vegetation. It also possesses an animating spirit, because even inanimate objects possess some sort of energizing spirit that keeps them in existence and prevents their disappearance. So everything has a body and a soul, and it is the soul, the energy that creates or that keeps it in existence. Based on this awareness, spirituality is referred to in the Torah and Jewish tradition as good and life, because it is a living force that remains alive and in existence forever. Spirituality is an eternal reality, whereas physical matter is referred to as negative or death because it decomposes and eventually ceases to exist when it is absent the spirit within it. The material has no means of existing independently. So again, human beings, animals, everything exists or is made up of a body, material, and the spiritual, the soul, if you will. And the soul is what gives it life. Continuing in the text, from my flesh I can perceive God. This is in Job and Eov, meaning that we can understand a little bit about God from pondering our own existence and our own makeup. We intuitively sense that we have a life force that provides us with our life, and that it is our primary identity. That were our souls to leave our body, the body would be left like an inanimate rock and eventually decompose and disappear. The same is true of all that exists. The entire cosmos, all its contents exists due to a divine spirit that gives existence to everything. That divine light and force is the entire life sustaining power of all that exists. If the sustaining power, if the God's vitality would depart, all existence will revert to absolute nothingness. So just like a body absent a soul, its existence will immediately begin to degrade and disappear. Well, the world itself has the same kind of dynamic with God's creative energy. If we meditate on this idea, we'll realize that the material existence of each entity is entirely dependent on the spiritual force within it. Physicality is nullified before the presence of the divine light that is its source of existence. This realization will inspire a powerful desire, love, and yearning for the divine. We'll no longer desire that which exists superficially, and which is in fact death, because the superficial part of existence is temporary and tenuous. So it'll eventually decompose and disappear. All that we desire is to attach to the divinity and the mainstay of existence. So the last paragraph is not necessarily describing a reality, but a possible state of perception. So we just read a overwhelmingly deep text describing existence, God, creation, body, soul, big stuff. And what it really does is it reframes our whole life and our concept of existence. So let's say we just read this text, or if you're on Zoom, you heard me read it. Interesting, thought-provoking. Maybe it's an important idea, but it would probably remain on the periphery. What Hitbonenut calls for is to take a text like this and try to further break it down, parse it, make sense of it if it makes sense, and try to further identify with it. So here, the meditation exercise, which has 3 steps, or there's 3 points that we just read about. Number 1, everything has a soul, right? That's the assertion this text just made. Number 2, we said that the soul is the source of life of everything, but most noticeably in the human condition. All of us know, how do we know that we have a soul? Because in its absence, when a person is not alive, there's not much that the human can contribute or do. Spirituality, therefore, should be valued. So these are the 3 points. Everything has a soul. That soul is the source of life. And by extension, if the source of life and the thing that is really eternal and brings value and life to us is probably worthwhile to hold on. That's what we just read. So we'll break it down a little bit further. Let's think a little deeper about what it means that everything has a body and a soul. So us, let's say we have our life, we have the thing that animates us, and we have our bodies. Okay, that we can understand. So what does it mean that everything has a body and soul? So I want to challenge you to join me in being challenged with exercise 2.4, page 56. Identify body and soul. Identify the material expression and the purpose behind each of the following. So let's say, and we'll do this together. Let's say you have dinner with a spouse or a close friend. What's happening? What's the snapshot? What do you see? You're slurping your Chinese food? Or your loved one's enjoying the egg rolls, let's say? Okay. So the snapshot is you're putting something in your mouth. Is there depth? Is there meaning or value to anyone? No, that's just a bodily function. But turn on the sound. Tune into what's happening. What is happening? 2 dear friends or lovers are spending quality time together, commonly experiencing the experience of spending time together. Maybe they're they're thinking about what they're eating. There's a deep and meaningful moment. So the body is the event. The soul is the purpose. Take it to the next step, disciplining a child. Take a snapshot and all you'll see is a parent or a teacher or someone wagging their finger. Maybe there's sound, you hear them screaming. What's that? Think about it. You know what's happening here? A loving parent is guiding a child to be more well-adjusted, prepared for taking on real life. That's what's happening. Wow, that's big. That's a big idea. Exercising, the same thing. The person's lifting heavy. You can have a person lifting bricks to build that. Think about it. The person is exercising because they are tending to their health. Maybe they're building muscles, but more likely they're doing something that's going to be very constructive. Maybe they're relieving stress and tension. And lastly, you could shake someone's hands in a deal. A snapshot is two primates holding each other's hand. Wow. Is there anything impressive about two primates holding each other's hands? Not really. And that's it, right? But if you know that what's happening here is two individuals are trusting each other and they're giving each other their word, and the handshake represents in this society the firm assurance that we're going to adhere to the terms of our agreement. Well, that's something very deep and meaningful. So you have the body, which is just an insignificant something, and then you have the soul, the purpose, the reason, or the meaning. And I think, Sheila, I think you said, when we're talking about defining spirituality, it was defining things that are abstract. And so you have the event and you have the spirit of what's transpiring. And so what we're saying here, that everything has a body and soul, and you want to identify the soul, we mean we want to encounter purpose, a higher purpose in everything. So life, soul, that's the purpose, idea. Body, it's inanimate, it's boring, it's nothing.
But the body is a vehicle.
Oh, the body is a vehicle. What we're saying is a body without a soul is dead. A body with a soul has all of the beauty and richness and depth of the soul. So when we interact and we have a conversation, who is interacting? Two bodies or two souls through a vehicle? And that's our point. So you made the point precisely so. So we are a bunch of bodies that are animated by a soul, and therefore we're able to have deep, meaningful, soulful experiences together. We could try to wade through a deep topic like meditation. The body is essential, of course, but the body alone is boring, inconsequential, and can't really do much of anything. One more example. Folks, help me out over here. What do you see on the screen? I want to give some attention to our Zoomers. What do you see on the screen? Dr. Moskowitz, what do you see on the screen?
I see 4 children and 2 parents and lighting a Hanukkah.
4 children and parents are lighting Hanukkah. What do you see about the dad in the picture? What's he doing?
He's bending over.
Doctor, what's the dad doing?
He's lighting the candles.
He's lighting candles. But what do you see about his pose?
He's what?
Bending over.
What I notice, again, this is just, what I notice is he's bending down.
Yes.
Does he need to bend down to reach the candles? I don't think so. I think what's happening here is he's bending down to be closer to his kids. He wants to be in their world. Do you notice that?
Yeah, so why doesn't the mother bend too?
You might disagree with me. I don't know. This is just my interpretation. But what I see, the most beautiful thing about this picture, I mean, I'm a rabbi. Menorahs are important. It's kind of a family moment. But what I see is that he's not just lighting with his kids. He's trying to engage them in a really beautiful way.
And a closeness. I see.
There's a closeness. You see that? That's what touches me.
Bringing them together.
He's going into their world, which I love. That's what I love about the picture. But you know what? What's the body of this picture? What is the body? What is the inanimate? It's a bunch of lines and pigments and pixels. That's pretty boring. But when we have the tools to see the story, the message, all of a sudden this picture comes alive. First of all, it is a picture. That's a family together on Hanukkah, which we know is a holiday of significance. And again, this is you don't have to agree with me, but I think him bending down shows a father trying to engage with his kids and to be in their world, to see things from their perspective. And so the way I see it, this is the soul. And that's the value of art. Art is not just a series of pixels and strokes.
Right.
It's that together, all of those little strokes communicate something rich and beautiful. And that is the soul of the picture. So why or the painting? So why does the painting exist? The painting exists to convey the soul, the story. How is the story conveyed? Through a vehicle, which is the pen strokes, which in an analogy, the body. The body delivers it. Without the canvas, without the paint, we would not have this beautiful picture. But
also the candle to me represents a message of hope.
Right, for sure.
Goodness, and that's part of it too, I think.
So now that we're really trying to think and realize that everything has the dull body and that there's the meaningful, rich soul. Again, I'm not putting down the body. I just mean, I'm only putting down the body now to magnify the I'm only trying to magnify the contribution of the soul to the event. So now, what justifies, what makes this picture want to exist? What makes someone want to make this picture? It is the soul. Again, we might see different things, but the soul is that there is a picture being conveyed. Now, therefore, we'll start to realize, we think in this paradigm, that everything exists because something brought it into existence and it conveys something deep and meaningful. So you have a piece of wood, which is just a heavy, dense thing that was once grew on a tree and now it's detached. You have the fact that it is a material that can be used for construction and on and on. And so our soul encourages us. We're talking about, right, turning up the sound, the volume of the soul. It encourages us to see things from the more of the abstract, the value, the reason, the message, the story. And being that everything primarily, the primary value of everything is the soul, therefore, we can and should begin to place a higher premium on matters of the soul. And so, if we begin to use this paradigm in all of our experiences, we allow the soul to communicate to us the richness of the story. All of a sudden, a physical world can be constantly broadcasting purpose, something a tad more abstract, dare I say, even holy or meaningful. And this is what it means, and I'm going to go real fast. We have like 3 minutes left. Oh no, I have 1 minute left. We talk about choosing life. I know it's a slogan for a campaign, but really, what it really means in Judaism is choose the enduring soul, the divine part and purpose of existence. Because if the soul is what animates the body, and God creating the world is what warrants and brings it into existence, where wouldn't you want to be in tune with the higher force, the higher being behind everything? Wouldn't you want to be in tune with the original intention of existence and the purpose of existence? And so that's what we're talking about. And here, let's just do the slides real fast. And so basically, the bottom line of our conversation is that spirituality, which we talked about, the elusive spirituality, is somewhere up there or beyond us or abstract. In truth, it's not beyond us. It's within us. We have that soul. We just need to find the tools to turn up its volume, to turn down the static. So spirituality isn't far away. It's deep within. And everything has within it a dose of spirituality, which is the inner soul, the reason, the message of everything that exists. And so this is not an automatic shift in perception, but Judaism has a mode of meditation, which the goal is to help us become more in tune to the soul, to become more in tune to meaning, to spirituality, to the creator who desires a universe, but he desires it because there's so much beauty, purpose, and contribution. And God desires us, and he gives us a soul, affording us the opportunity to by extension tune in to the meaning and the soul of the universe. The reality is the exercise, the practice of becoming in tune with this is hard, is rigorous, is demanding, but it's there for us. We can do it. And there are many side benefits to spirituality. So we're talking about feeling spiritual, feeling our soul, but it's actually good for health. People can be more well-adjusted when they have a spiritual part in their life and to their life. It could help a person with their relationship. So there's a whole bunch of items on figure 2.2 that I invite you to take a look at. And so the bottom line, my dear friends, is you got to practice and meditate regularly, both turning down the static, giving us a moment of pause, a moment of solitude to hear our own voice, and also to spend our time orienting ourselves with the soul's vocabulary, the soul's language, and by extension, allowing us to turn up the volume and expanding our spiritual creativity, our spiritual bandwidth. And this is the spiritual contribution and the spiritual reason why Jews for all times have been engaged in this process of meditation. The two Hebrew words, hitbonenut, solitude, which I called turning down the distractions, and then there's hitbonenut, turning up the volume of the soul, learning its language, and both together can give us the gift of a more spiritual, rich, meaningful, purpose-driven life. Sounds like a whole lot. Yes, it is. Is it ambitious? Yes, it is. But a road towards spiritual enlightenment is not a day trip, but it could be a life of taking gradual steps and feeling it and becoming more in tune with ourselves. My dear friends, this concludes lesson 2, meditation from Sinai. Last week, we spoke about meditations that allow us to deal with our anxiety and negative emotions. Today, we spoke about the Jewish ancient practices and traditions of feeling spirituality and hearing the sound, the voice of our soul, and perceiving the soul and the higher purpose of everything. Thank you so much for joining us. And next week, God willing, we'll up the ante. We'll take it a step further. And we're going to talk more about the deep mystical ideas revolving around divinity, God. Don't be afraid. Come on back. We'd love to have you. And I'm so grateful for everyone that joined us today, virtually and in person. I'm going to stay here for any discussion or comments or questions, but there's no pressure.